Each of us has three games, and Emilio, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, so I'm going to immediately derail Callum's train by bringing up the fact that I have an honorable mention.
Hey everyone, welcome to Byte Marx, a podcast for gamers by gamers about politics. Although nowadays we're a little bit more multimedia than that. I don't think we've actually
Yeah.
made a video about a game in a long time besides the Prim review.
Well, I think the thing is, right, we're busy guys. You're writing a book. I'm doing a million jobs.
Yeah, it's it
um,
is it, it's easier to talk about things like movies and stuff. They don't require as much commitment as games.
yeah, and the thing is, I found that as time goes on, I'm a lot more circumspect about the games that I'm playing, and I'm playing fewer of them. I'm enjoying myself more, but I'm playing fewer of them.
Yeah,
So, when I was a kid, I would play literally anything that you gave me. If you just gave me a game and said, "Here, play this game," I would have played it because, you
absolutely,
know, that's
100%.
yeah, it's just the nature of the beast. And I had no qualms about playing absolute trash.
Yep. 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 Croc 2. Croc 2 comes to mind. Buggy piece of garbage, but like I played it.
Man, I played Gex. That let me tell you, if you want a buggy piece of garbage where the
Oof.
protagonist is also smug about it, that's making dated references that child me has no idea. Like,
I mean, we're about
who
to
are these
like
people,
people
Gex?
people are gonna burn down our channel if you start making fun of Gex. It is beloved.
I know it is, but I didn't have fun playing it as a child.
Don't
That could
hate
just
us
be
for the
my
things we did when we were young.
yeah, that could just be my general like. I sucked at platformers, right? That's like the major thing that I was bad at as a child is platformers. But I think that I've gotten much better at video games, and I know you have gotten much better at video games, judging by all the streams which you guys can watch on Mondays and sometimes Thursdays when I'm there.
Look at Paul Blart over here and his expert segues.
Yeah, I've ridden a Segway before and not fallen off.
You've ridden a
So,
Segway before?
yeah, at Moses Mabita Stadium, which
What?
was yeah, they used to do Segway tours.
Okay, okay. Well, you and I are gonna have things to talk about after this episode, but for now, we're doing the top three games of 2024, and as per usual, let me explain. These are not the top three games that came out in 2024. These are the ones that we played in 2024. This is Byte Marx, top three games of that year. So anything goes as long as we played it. Each of us has three games, and Emilio, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, so I'm going to immediately derail Callum's train by bringing up the fact that I have an honorable mention.
Yeah, it really. We decided on honorable mentions a while ago because we had too many games to talk about, and like last year, I didn't play nearly enough. I could talk about the prequels to some of the games on this list, but to be honest, I didn't play nearly enough for me to go like, yeah, I would talk about that one as well. And Emilio's just like, I
So,
have so many.
well, it's the thing is, the honorable mention that I'm going to suggest is a trilogy of games that are all just very similar, right? I recently got into playing, well, I recently got back into, let me say this, playing hidden object games, which are games where you have to click four items on a screen and they're all hidden. You know, like those books that you would read as a child,
Well, now,
and they were
okay.
like,
I'm finding out that you're a 40-year-old mother of three on Facebook, apparently.
yeah, I know that the genre primarily skews towards women, but I've always enjoyed playing those games.
Isn't that
And
weird? That's kind of
well,
like a
it's
really weird form of misogyny, is like only women would look for things.
yeah, the assumption is that women need calming, relaxing, unsophisticated video games, whereas real men TM will play Call of Duty a bajillion times in a row and
Real men
stay stuck.
TM hate Call of Duty now. I've seen nothing
Yeah,
but hatred for the new Call of Duty.
yeah, because it lived long enough to become like just accepting of women, I guess, in video games and not violently hostile to them. That's why they hate it. But it's very silly. So I played this games series called the Enigmatus trilogy, and each one is basically a hidden object game with like a twist. You are a detective who is on the trail of a missing person. Actually, this is gonna have spoilers, right? I'm gonna talk about this. This is gonna have spoilers. In the first game, you're just looking for a missing person, and then in the second game, you are investigating an alternate reality theme park, and in the third game, you're fighting a literal archdevil from hell.
What?
Yeah, so the game escalates extremely quickly because there's this like super. You know how Assassin's Creed has like the modern world and then the like the ancient conspiracy and the ancient aliens and all of that jazz. Yeah, this game does one of those where at first it seems like, oh, you're just a detective looking for a missing girl in a small town in New England, and then it turns out no, the priest who is obviously a bad guy is actually a demon. But then it turns out no, he's actually not just a demon. He's like an archdevil, and there's an ancient conspiracy, and the archangel Michael came down from the earth, and yeah, it's just like this.
And then you desynchronize, and what's the word for someone who will like descendant? You're your descendant, like 30 years into the future.
Yeah, it's so crazy, actually, how this game goes. But the thing is, I've played a lot of them recently just because they were on sale and they were like really, really cheap. So I just bought a bunch and I just started playing them. One was actually like a ripoff of BioShock because the company is Polish. And I think they think that they could just get away with ripping off these ideas.
Is that a Polish thing?
Well, it's like, it's obviously English is not the first language of the developers, right? They have English voice actors, but I can tell that these people were not given a script by native English speakers because sometimes it's very strange. So I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, yeah, okay, look, this is a sincere effort of storytelling. By the third game, there were even QuickTime events in a hidden object game.
Oofa doofa.
Yeah, why is this game an honorable mention and not higher up? Well, the answer is quite simple. It's going to be a very polarizing genre for a lot of people. Some people don't like these types of games. Some people don't even think that they're like real video games. I really enjoyed my time playing it. I particularly liked actually solving the puzzles. The hidden object part I can take or leave, but it was just interesting. It was just a puzzle game, right?
Yeah.
So that's why it's my honorable mention. It's something that I think if you were a fan of the genre, you've already played this game, or if you're looking for something to play, I think you should play it. But if you're not a fan of this type of gameplay, stay away, is sort of my opinion.
Alrighty. For my honorable mention, which was sprung on me for this very moment, I don't know, maybe I'll just recommend a game that I think everyone should play. We did a whole video about it. Go play Eastwood.
Oh, yeah.
It's good. It's fun. It's good. I think it was one of my games of the year, like, a long time ago. Go and play it.
Yeah,
I haven't heard anyone talking about it, and it's so good.
It's like the peril of a lot of indie games, right? Which is like you.
Oh, I don't even know that Eastwood is that much of an indie game because it has a pretty big publisher behind it, and it released on like all the consoles.
Oh, okay. So then maybe it's like AA.
Maybe.
I guess
there needs to be a word for the in between because like AA doesn't sound like anything.
Yeah, it's the mid level, right? It's just like instead of the big box publishers or the indie devs, it's the middle devs,
Yeah. It's the Malcolm in the middle devs.
Yeah.
But yeah, Eastwood is really good. It's like very Ghibli meets Final Fantasy meets Zelda.
It's got an adorable art style.
It's got good music too. You can find, there's like so many little references in this game. It's really weird to find a game that feels like it's been made specifically for you. Because like at one point I found Hayao Miyazaki smoking outside of a milk store that he owns. And at another point I found someone selling spices whose name is Da Gama. I was like, is this Vasco da Gama? That's a weird pull for your game.
I mean, I think if you're South African, you've probably learned about Vasco da Gama. I don't know how many other people would have learned about Vasco, but...
Okay, here's an endorsement for Eastwood. At one point in Eastwood, in one of the story missions, and this isn't a spoiler, there is a carnival, and you can go to the carnival and play a bunch of mini-games. And it's been so long since I've played a game that genuinely, like... puts effort into its mini games. There's a baseball one where you have to like time your hit and the baseball keeps getting faster. And I spent far longer at this carnival than I should have. And the carnival is relevant to the story.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so like
you can tell
go and play it.
Go and play Eastwood.
You get to fight a cow at one point that has superpowers. Go and play it.
Glowing endorsement from you, Callum.
Thank you.
But I think we've kept our viewers in suspense long enough. So we're going to start with my number 3 game. Okay, so I'm just gonna preface this by saying there's gonna be a lot of spoilers potentially for all the games that I'm talking about, because I really, in order for me to explain why I like them, I do have to talk about spoilery things. But the TL don't listen for my third game is Nightmare Frames. Now, Nightmare Frames is a horror game, and it is produced by an indie developer who is, I think, an up and comer in the scene. I think, because I think he's really, really good. It's just a guy who runs a studio called Postmodern Adventures, and in a theme that I think is kind of interesting, it's also a Spanish indie developer. So Nightmare Frames is about a guy named Alan Goldberg, who is a writer in the 1980s. He wants to write like a high budget drama, but he is like stuck writing B horror movies.
Did Stephen King write this game?
Well,
is he in
Spanish.
small town America?
No, he's in Los Angeles, right?
Oh, okay.
He's stuck in the heart of the city writing low budget slasher movies, and his life changes when his friend and producer Peter Evans kills himself in his Hollywood mansion.
Wow.
And sends Alan on a quest to basically change his whole life. I don't think that this is a point and click adventure game. This is not exactly like mechanically. I don't think there's really anything here that's very different from a lot of point and click adventure games. However, I will say this. Writing wise, this is brilliant. I think that this game actually does a really good job of putting you in the framework of an actual writer in the 1980s, in that era of Hollywood, when Hollywood was happening. The 50s revival. You learn a lot about the history of Hollywood as well, because there's a lot of stuff that's produced by Hollywood. This is a game that's fundamentally about Hollywood, right? It's about the movie making machine and a lot of the horrors that can be produced by it in a lot of ways.
Yep.
It's also about
how the snow in the original Wizard of Oz was asbestos.
yeah. It's there's a lot of it doesn't shy away from mature topics. There's exploitation, there's violence, nothing necessarily graphic, but you get depictions of people being abused. There's cults, right? Because the 80s was also that new age sort of vibe. And I will say this, I think that
what's the art style like?
It's pixel graphics, but it's fairly well detailed. And I think that there's a lot of passion, especially in the music, right? I think the music of this game actually really sells you that you are on a nightmare journey. I think you really do have to be an adult to play a game like this, because it'll take you places that are very dark and very serious. But it's just great. It was just absolutely great. I enjoyed my time. I felt haunted at the end of it. And okay. I mean,
Let me ask you, why is this at your third spot then?
So I think that games have to inspire an emotional reaction in you to be memorable, right? And the whole time I was playing this game, I kept thinking of, this is reminding me so much of a lot of the media that I love, a lot of the movies and TV shows, because again, this is about Hollywood in the 80s. But the reason why it's only at number 3 is gameplay-wise, it's really not that different from all the other point-and-click adventure games that I've played. Sometimes it's actually kind of frustrating, because there are parts of the story that I'm like, oh, okay, well, it was obvious that I needed to do this, but then it didn't, I had to pixel hunt a couple of times, and I'm like, oh, I'm missing things, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, obviously.
The adventure game conundrum of, you have to follow the exact line of logic that the developer had.
It's especially egregious in the game's final area, which, to be fair, is a hell dimension, but...
Is that what we're calling Hollywood these days?
Yeah, I mean, come on. It's bad, but it's not unbearable. In fact, I feel like I'm overstating it just because of how I really like the game. It's so good story-wise. It's so well done as a story that I really feel like you have to support this developer. You've got to give them money so they'll make more of these games, right? I know a lot of people probably will watch this on YouTube. I'm sure there are let's plays of it. But the thing is, you have to give this guy money so he can make more of these games. Absolutely, please, just give him money so he can make more of these games. And as far as I'm aware, it's on sale right now on Steam.
So go and
No,
get
no, it's not
it.
no, it's not on sale. But it was on sale. It was on sale at the recent winter sale. So it does go on sale. It's not too expensive generally. Plus, you get a free art book and you get the OST. And in my opinion, that's like really worth it.
Alrighty, well, that's a pretty glowing endorsement for Nightmare Frames. You should go and check it out, viewer. I don't know why I
Wait,
started advertising.
just one more thing. If you're on the fence about this game, the developer has released on his itch.io page like a couple of free point-and-click adventure games that are also really, really good. And one I think is just called LA Ghost Story, which is it's again there's a lot of attention here. This person is they know their stuff. Support them, all of that jazz. Anyway, Callum, what is your third game?
Okay, so, real quick. My third game of the year absolutely didn't come out anywhere close to recently. It's also a game that I'm gonna get into why I think. So it's Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2, which is weird for me because that's an MMO basically, which is
Yeah.
not my usual cup of tea. But there is like single player content, so you don't have to play online, and thank goodness because I play it on PlayStation, so I'm not paying for PSN. But let me start with why I put this at number three. And this is going to be sort of a theme throughout my entire list, which is who can I recommend this to? I would not be able to recommend Xenoverse 2 to anyone except people who like Dragon Ball and potentially even people who have played Xenoverse 1. Because unfortunately, this game does have a worse story than Xenoverse 1, in my opinion, and it continues on from Xenoverse 1. But it does, it's so weird. Like some of these games, like this game carries out over a lot of assets from the original game. So the character customization is basically the same, which sucks. A lot of the moves and things work the same. A lot of the models look the same for characters, but weirdly, the outfits have different stats, which I don't particularly understand. But it's still a fun game, and the reason that it's in my third slot is because I have put so many hours into this. It is one of those anime games where you get to make your own character and play
Hmm.
in the anime, and that will never not be like catnip for me. It
Oh yeah,
is.
it's like the ultimate wish fulfillment power fantasy kind of deal.
Oh,
Like
absolutely, dude.
you're
Being able
there
to.
with in the Dragon Ball universe, Callum, the great fighter,
Yeah,
I guess.
me, my original character of
Don't
fighting
steal.
alongside Goku and all my friends from my childhood. Yeah, it's fan fiction. And the fun part about these kinds of fan fiction games is that you get to try a lot of things out that you kind of never considered. You can play as a variety of like races in this game. So you can be an Earthling, Saiyan, Namekian, one of the Frieza
Hmm.
race, which for some reason doesn't have a name. It's just called the Frieza race. And yeah, they just never gave it a name. And you can play as a Majin, like what a Majin Buu is. So a bubblegum demon. And being able to like make a bunch of being able to just see what people make, like running around the world and seeing other people's characters stand idle and things like that, and seeing like, oh man, this character has such a cool outfit. I want to go and like try it. Or this character looks awesome, despite the fact that they are 3 feet tall and essentially a circle. But they just like the way they've styled their character is so cool, and I love it. And it's one of those games that truly I would never be able to recommend to anyone who isn't deeply into this stuff. It is,
Hmm.
so, and that's why it's not that Xenoverse 2 is a bad game. Like I say, it has a lot of quality of life improvements over the original one, like being able to move faster in the hub world and eventually fly. Being able to find your teachers a lot better. Because one of the things about this game is that you can use any character's moves, and you can go, get them as your teacher, raise their friendship levels, and sometimes they give you stuff, but they mostly teach you how to do their techniques. Um,
I do have a question about the core gameplay loop, if I may.
yeah.
So I'm trying to picture what a Dragon Ball MMO type game is. So, do you go around fighting people in one-on-one fights and then you level up, or are you battling like random Goombas, or do you
G-
like have to PvP somebody?
that classic
Like
Dragon Ball villain, Goombas. Um, what happens is that you, in the story mode and in what's called parallel quests, which are like the side quests for the game, you get put into basically an arena. It takes place on Earth or Namek or space or whatever, and you can only move around in that arena. There's invisible walls to stop you from going off. The arenas are decently big, they're not like tiny or anything, and generally enemies appear. Usually it's like one or two or three at a time. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's just one person. You can lock onto a person and then it's basically a fighting game.
yeah, okay. So you fight people and then you get rewards. I assume like XP or money,
Yeah, you
and
get
then you spend that
XP
to.
and money, and occasionally you can unlock outfits or skills or super souls, which are like they give you stat boosts and like passive abilities and things like that. Sometimes you unlock artwork for loading screens.
Can
Um,
you eat sensu beans to regain your health?
no, you consume capsules, which is another
Oh,
thing from
okay.
the game. You get energy capsules, but you do get items.
Hmm.
The clothing affects your stats until very much like there's a point in the game where they introduce a machine where you can convert clothing into an item that is the only thing that affects your stats. So then you can wear whatever outfit you want and you just equip that item and your stat changes remain the same regardless of what clothing you wear. And I like that feature.
Interesting.
I think it lets
Yeah,
you
it's like
style your
a
character.
World of Warcraft transmogrification
Yeah,
spell.
basically, it's like transmogrifying your armor. It's great. You could there's so many techniques to use. You have access to basically all the transformations from across the series, except some of them. Like you can't turn into a great ape, unfortunately, but I can understand why. Although the Namekians can get huge.
Yeah, I was gonna say like, can you if you're a Super Saiyan, can you turn into an ape?
No, you fight a bunch of great apes, so they're in the
Hmm.
game. The
Because I have a memory of like I didn't watch a lot of Dragon Ball. In fact, I could probably say the number of episodes that I've seen are on one hand. But I do have a memory of like an episode where I think it's Baby Goku who's rampaging around as a great ape, and it just felt like a horror movie, I guess, or like a horror.
which do you remember the scenery he was rampaging around in? Because I can tell you exactly what scene that is.
It happened at night. There was like a city made of like white buildings, I guess.
City, city.
Maybe city, yeah. It could
Ooh.
just be me misremembering, but
Okay,
I've
well,
always found it like
if it was a city, or maybe was it a castle?
could have been a castle, yeah.
Then that's the Pilaf saga. That's the very first saga of Dragon Ball, and the very first time that Goku does transform into a great ape.
So for those of you at home who are thinking that Callum wasn't actually a Dragon Ball super fan, consider yourself dunked on.
Yeah, I have a weirdly encyclopedic knowledge of this stuff. It's man. Every time I think about it, I'm like, I should have done more with my life. But yeah, it's Dragon Ball Xenoverse. Here's the last thing I'll say about it. It has its problems in that it can get repetitive. I've heard that the PvP isn't great. Like there's a lot of moves that are just straight up better than other moves, and people tend to spam those. And also the
So
net
it's hard to
code.
balance.
Yeah, and also the net code is apparently bad, which I've kind of experienced with the PC version.
Hmm.
When I played that for a bit, is which is why I play the PS4 version now, is or the PlayStation version now, is that the PC version chugs like
Hmm.
crazy because it's always connected and the netcode is just bad. But yeah, the server often doesn't respond and things like that. But the single player content is still fun. They're still releasing DLCs for it for some reason, even though they haven't fixed any of the bugs. And DLCs include things like content from Super, content from the movies, new characters that you can play with, play against. I believe one of the new DLCs released young Goku from Dragon Ball Daima, which is the new series on Netflix. So like
Oh,
they're
okay.
adding new content all the time. And it is at the end of the day, it is fun to create your own Dragon Ball Z original character and fly around and shoot laser beams and stuff. I wish that they would make a DBZ Kakarot style game where I get to make my own character, but for now, Xenoverse is your best opportunity of doing that. So if you have an itch for that kind of thing, check out Xenoverse 2.
Okay, I think that's a glowing endorsement. And we even managed to drop like some really specific Dragon Ball lore.
I would love a video where I just take you through Dragon Ball lore. I've been trying to get people to donate on streams to make me force you to play a Dragon Ball Z game with me. I actually want to force you to play Xenoverse, and then I can see what kind of character you'd make.
You see, the problem is I don't do character customization. You know, I don't really do it. I'll just pick defaults, or I'll.
But you see, that's the joy, Emilio, is that I can force you to customize a character and maybe teach you the joy of making your own guy.
Yeah, I mean, it'll have to happen at gunpoint, basically.
I'll put you at gunpoint on stream, folks. Go and support our Patreon if you want me to gunpoint Emilio into playing Xenoverse 2 and force him to do the character creator.
Yeah, you know, I'm susceptible to bribes and or extortion.
All right, but speaking of bribes, extortion, and video games, what is your second game of the year, Emilio?
Right. So everybody knows that I am a big fan of strategy games. Everybody knows that I am a fairly large fan of games like XCOM. I've even played one of the original inspiring games of XCOM, which is Laser Squad, invented by Julian Gollop.
What a name. Laser Squad.
Well, you know, the thing about Laser Squad is a fascinating idea of like what video games were going to be, you know. It was invented by a guy named Julian Gollop. He was just a British guy, and he just started programming games when he was like in school. And you know, at that time you could do stuff like that because Laser Squad is like 1980s. I want to say like we're talking about like DOS days and Amiga, you know, all of that jazz.
Wowzers.
But the thing about these types of XCOM games is that they can take a lot of time. They tend to take up just a huge amount of effort and energy. And, you know, the older I get, the less time I have for these types of things. And again, no shade to Firaxis and their, you know, recreation of the genre. But sometimes what I want is I want an XCOM-like experience, but I don't actually want to have to do all the management stuff, you know? What I want to do is I want to have a squad of guys with unique abilities that I can drop into a environment, have them fight a bunch of enemies, and then, you know, move on. You know, not have to bother with like the metagame progression.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, not have to like research weapons and build things and whatever.
Yeah, so introduce Spaceland by Tortuga Team.
Ooh.
Yeah, so this game is the oldest. I think this is actually the only game on my list that is not released this year. So I was playing some recent games this year. So Spaceland is 2019, and it is basically a turn-based strategy game that is actually, funnily enough, inspired by Laser Squad. So you are a team of space marines, or space rangers as they get called in the game, and you are investigating a frozen planet that has issued a distress signal. From here, sci-fi shenanigans starts to unravel.
Frostpunk is about to sue somebody.
Well, no, I mean, this is different because this is a sci-fi game, and Frostpunk is a dieselpunk game. And really, the cold doesn't really factor that much into the plot. It's just, it has more in common, I guess, with, like, The Thing, in the sense of, like, we're at an isolated Arctic research station, and it's obvious people have been doing bad experiments, you know?
But it's not obvious, like, what the experiments were or what their result was.
So what I like about this game is that it basically actually has a campaign. Each campaign consists of a series of levels, and you will progress through each level with every character. Sometimes you have a limited number of characters that you can bring. Sometimes you get a choice. You can change loadouts to some extent. Each character has like a class that they're in, and they can get broadly some types of weapons. Some guys are super restricted. Some guys have a little bit more choice, but it's not a lot of management, right? It's really not a lot of management. If you do well in the mission, you get a little bit of a currency that you can spend to upgrade items, but you don't need to complete the game. And, you know, a lot of the mission objectives are fairly distinct and unique. And yeah, I mean, there are boss fights in this game that are actually legitimately difficult.
Okay,
you know,
would you call this game more like gameplay focused or story focused, or does it have like an equal measure of both?
So I think that the story is not going to win any awards. You can basically see the twists coming as they happen, right? If you played a lot of sci-fi games, you can see where this is going. And I don't think it's necessarily very original. I will say this: I'm a person that will not play something unless I feel a narrative engagement with it, and I felt like the story was narratively engaging enough for me to actually play. By the end, I'm like, yeah, our Space Rangers have like actual personalities, and they are an actual team developing, their struggles and stuff like that. Again,
Okay.
it's not groundbreaking, but it is entertaining enough.
Yeah,
I will
because
say
I
this: it's
like from the little that I've seen of XCOM, because they're basically clone soldiers, I felt like it would be difficult to get attached to them.
yeah, each guy is their own character, and they're all distinct because there's only 7 of them. And if one dies in a level, he doesn't perma die, but you lose him for that level. I will say this: the enemies are very very overwhelming. You will be surrounded by lots of enemies very frequently, and you've got to really manage your abilities. In a lot of ways, this game is actually closer to a puzzle game than anything else because you need to figure out how to use these abilities to do stuff. Like, some enemies will spawn out of the ground. You have to blow up the spawning hole. There's one level which is just a series of elevators, and you have to figure out how to close the elevators because just a million space aliens are coming out of these elevators, and if you don't figure out how to do that, you're gonna have a bad time.
Hmm.
There's one level that really sticks with me, which is for that level, you control a giant robot with like
Oh, this is
rapid fire grenade launchers,
this
right?
is Emilio catnip. This is the my equivalent of Dragon Ball is your giant robot.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I took screenshots of the robot and I wanted to build it out of Lego, which is how.
The greatest compliment any game can ever receive.
Yeah, I mean, there are some games where I'm like, I'm inspired by this thing, I'm going to build it out of Lego. I always send it to the developers on Reddit, and they're like, "Whoa, that's really cool." But yeah, so that level with the giant robot, like, oh yeah, we have a giant robot where you have these double-barreled grenade launchers. They're really powerful, but the objective of the level is to get the robot into an elevator. And the thing
Oh,
is,
it's too
it's
big.
very slow. It's
Oh,
very slow. So you have to actually the challenge is yes, the robot is powerful, but you will get overwhelmed if you don't move. If you don't figure out a way to cut off the enemy lines of attack, you will get overwhelmed and killed. And I gotta say, that is actually legitimately a test of your strategy, right? It's not it's turn based, so you're not responding to how well you can click or how fast you can click. It's purely about how well you can think about how to solve the problem. And
is the environment like interactable?
yeah. So
So
there
if
is a
you
lot
blow
of
up a wall or something, will it actually be
well,
destroyed?
yeah. So it's pseudo interactable. So there's lots of objects that can be blown up or moved or kicked, but the actual terrain itself is relatively static. The game compensates for that by allowing you to do things like activate moving platforms and switches and other sorts of things.
Okay, so
Um,
there's an element of taking your environment into account when it comes to the
yeah,
tactics.
no, absolutely. Also, you only have a limited amount of ammo, right?
Oh my
Um,
god.
yeah. So this game is actually, I would say, surprisingly difficult because your like badass space marine with his minigun can shoot it 3 times. That's
G-
it. You could shoot
gun
it 3 times.
chess.
Yeah, it's kind of like gun chess. Yeah, you can only shoot that gun 3 times, and ammo resupply is very limited. So you have to think, oh, yes, my really powerful gun. Do I use it on this basic enemy, or do I save it for something? It adds like survival mechanisms here, without it actually being a survival game, and I just think that's neat.
Okay.
I felt like the game always had something new to throw at me. I like the art style, which is very cartoony, but I feel like it was effective. I'm a big sucker for simplistic but colorful kind of art styles because this is not doom and gloom, right? I think one of my main criticisms of XCOM 2 is like it's just a lot of doom and gloom.
It's very grimy.
It's very grimy, and I understand why they did that, right? Because you're the rebellion, right, against the aliens. But like,
Yeah, it's thematic,
this
but that doesn't mean
this
it's like not gloomy.
yeah, no, this is more what's the word? This is more like classic 80s space adventure. You've got a guy with a cowboy hat. You've got a dweeb with a science gun, a classic space marine guy with a space marine haircut, and it's got a little bit of charm. And I will say this: the secret boss is very difficult. You have my respect if you manage to beat the secret boss. It's It's really interesting, actually.
If you manage to beat the
Um,
secret boss, record it and post it on our Discord, and Emilio will congratulate you over the
yeah,
internet.
I will send you a personal voice note congratulating you on beating the secret boss because I beat it, but it was really tricky. There were a lot of times when I played the game and I'm like, let me go back and play the level now that I know better and I could actually do better.
All right, well, this
Um,
game sounds like a slam dunk. Why is it your second slot?
oh, because the first game actually legitimately made me cry.
Like, wait, cry
I was
like.
I was having such an emotional moment when I was playing that game and when I finished it that I was like tearing up. So this game is like the calm before the storm. I had a lot of fun playing it. It's a very fond memory of mine. I might make Lego versions of the characters when I get a moment and I get some money. But ultimately the story was fairly predictable and it didn't really go to too many places where I thought, oh, this is new, this is original. The enemy design is good. There's a lot of variety, I think, in different types of foes that you'll encounter. Some are melee focused, some are range focused, some are really, really dangerous, and there's always a twist to dealing with a lot of them.
So
And
this,
yeah, I mean, it's got a cool robot, so what's to hate?
what more could you want?
Yeah, exactly. It's got XCOM didn't have XCOM 2 didn't
XCOM,
have.
I
I don't think
believe, had robots.
no XCOM 1 had cool robots, but they were a DLC expansion. XCOM 2, the robots were the enemies, but you get to control a giant robot in this game, so that's great in my book. Plus, there is a free DLC campaign that they provided to you for free that you can display,
Hey,
and that one is even harder in a lot of ways.
we love free DLC in this house.
I I love a expansion pack that is mostly more of the same, but then recontextualizes a couple of things.
Yeah, I
You know,
remember way back in the day when Magica was a game that was still being supported by Paradox. It had a DLC that was the Vietnam War, but with wizards. And I was just like, yeah, let's go.
yeah, yeah. All right. Well, speaking of let's go, your second game, sir.
Well, let's go indeed, because my second game is actually something that I streamed this year, and I can't stream anymore because it got copyright struck for the music.
No.
It
Dang
is,
copyright.
yeah, it's wild though because I've seen people streaming it, so I don't know why they went after us, but hey, YouTube has deprived you of my future playthrough of Cyber. Oh, wait, no, hang on, Bomb Rush Cyberpunk, which is a hell of a name that is
That's such a
so
cool
hard to
title.
remember. So Bomb Rush is my second choice for Game of the Year. The reason that it's at second, because I agonized over putting this or Xenoverse at second. The reason being that I've played way more of Xenoverse. I have not finished the Bomb Rush. I really haven't played very much of it at all, to be honest. But I wanted to put it at second again because I think I would recommend this to more people. It is, in
Mm.
essence, what Bomb Rush is that you are a skater in one of those sort of semi-anime worlds where everyone is super obsessed about one thing. In
Mm-hmm.
this one, it's skating, or rather, it's like trick
It's
riding or
a
something.
it's a classic trope of anime where like everything is normal except people are really into skateboarding.
Yeah, but it's like okay, it's not just skateboarding; it's rollerblading and like I guess
So extreme
BMX.
sports,
Yeah, it's kind
basically.
of it's like an extreme sports world, where they're like rebellious fighters against the system, and it's like, okay, dude, you're you're riding around on a plank with some wheels on it. Let's take a chill pill.
Yeah, yeah.
But in this one, you cannot take a chill pill because the police are legitimately after you. You were in prison. Your character is in prison, and gets busted out by someone you've never met before. But on your way out, while you learn the ropes of what it means to do rollerblading and whatnot, and also graffiti, you get found by, I believe it's a fairly high class officer of the law who almost defeats you, but you just about manage to damage their equipment and get away with your friend. And as you're escaping towards freedom, some dude who is a DJ, literally in the game, he's a DJ, shoots like a record at you and cuts your head off.
Dang.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then
So
you wake
this is
up,
I was about to say. I
and
do love
you
that twist.
you have a robot head. So
Like a face robot head, or are we talking like a one
full
eye
head,
cyclops kind of full head? Okay,
full head, as in like your neck gone, robot.
cool.
And you don't have any memories. It seems like this robot head has its own kind of like sentience to it, and it doesn't really remember the person who owned this body before it. But
Oh, I see.
you basically, your goal for the rest of the game is to find your missing head and learn about who this person was whose body you now
Yeah, who
have.
the robot was.
No, who the person was before
Oh,
the
right.
robot got to them, and find their head and reattach it to the body. And it's an interesting experience. Again, I haven't gotten super far into the story, so I can't tell you if it has like a good conclusion or whatever. But for the most part, the dialogue is fun, if a little bit cringy at times. The music is
Cr-
superb.
cringy how?
Cringy in the way that, like, it feels like everyone thinks that they're doing philosophy.
Oh, okay. I'm like they're hitting you with an XD rar kind of.
No, no,
Or
it's
no,
more
it's like
cringy as
they're.
in like it feels like people will say something ridiculous in this game and then they'll be completely po-faced about it. And I'm just like,
Oh,
oof.
okay, yeah.
But
I mean, anime
sometimes,
sometimes has
yeah.
that issue.
No, if you've never watched an anime where a 7-year-old prodigy talks about the difference between life and death and why he's caged in this eternal prisonscape of mortality, and it's like you're 7. If you haven't watched an anime like that, you haven't watched anime. And this kind of has that on in some cases. For some reason, all the skateboarders and stuff are called writers.
What?
Yeah, one of them is named Faust. Uh,
Okay, so it's that kind of anime.
But then, it'll have that. But then the judges of like the skateboarding team are a bunch of old men who kind of rap. And I'm just like, I don't
That's
like
cool.
the tone of this game is so wild and frantic, and I love it. It's also got retrofuturism, which if you know
Hmm.
about me, you know that's my
Oh
thing.
yeah,
The robot
yeah.
head is all big and bulky and weird and like kind of oblong, and there's like exposed pipes on it and stuff. It looks awesome. Everyone uses like flip phones and things that still like seem to be better than iPhones.
That's
Um,
radical.
there's like clearly what appears to be sort of a functioning cityscape, but everything does feel sort of in that like retro aspect to it. Every character's got style. I love the character designs. It has this stylized, like almost cell shaded art style that I really love. Like I said, the music is great. The gameplay is fun. It's a skating game, but there is one problem with the gameplay, which is the corner strategy. If you
Oh, what's
are
that?
if you're grinding on a rail that has a corner, every time you take the corner, your multiplier goes up. So there's kind of no reason to not do that,
Ah, right. Okay, I see.
which
So
is
it's like
a shame.
yeah, because there's like a really powerful meta,
Yeah. I
and
mean, like it sucks because like you can pull off a whole bunch of tricks and do something really cool and tag a wall as you're doing it and like flip off the cops who will eventually show up as you're skateboarding and you have to kind of get away from them. You get like a wanted level, but like there's sort of no point if you just find a corner to grind on 50 million times.
yeah, yeah, I see what you're saying.
But this game also does have boss fights, which make use of the skating mechanics in a fun and interesting way. The story, as
That's
cringy as the dialogue can be, the story isn't bad. It did make me want to keep playing to see where it goes, and I just love the vibe.
it's interesting that they have a game like that with boss fights, because like I guess realistically speaking, a boss fight basically is like
It's a test. It's a test
it's a
of the
test.
mechanics, like your ability to employ the mechanics.
Yeah, it's once you like any game can have a boss fight, provided you like are able to test your mechanics in an engaging way. Not every game should have a boss fight. Like I'm trying to think of like a walking simulator, and then just at the end of it, it just becomes Dark Souls for a second.
And the walking
Um,
simulator, and then you meet the final boss, Zork, and it becomes a
so,
text adventure.
but it's interesting. I always like seeing creative boss fights in video games, and
Yeah,
that's cool to see.
I think one day I'm going to talk about gimmick boss fights, things like the Bed of Chaos and stuff from Dark Souls, and how I think they fit into the landscape of gaming, because I think people tend to be harsher on them than they deserve. I think that they can be a very nice like respite, a little
Mm.
bit of variety. But I also do get anyway. Go play Bomb Rush Cyberpunk. It is not very long from what I've heard. It's not super expensive, and it's fun. It also isn't super graphic intensive. Like I know a big concern, especially with my top game of the year, a big concern with a lot of these games is will my machine be able to run them? You will. You'll be able to run this game, and I think you'll have a good time with it. It might not be everyone's cup of tea in regards to like the humor, and the story is a little bit very anime. There's clearly anime inspirations with all of this, but I do think that it's a fun experience, and it'll add a little wackiness to your Steam library.
Yeah, heaven forbid you have some wackiness in your Steam library.
Yeah, no, gotta make sure it's all the same flavor and none of it can touch. Emilio, shall we unveil to the public? They're waiting, Emilio, for your top game of the year of 2024.
Right.
The last
So,
year that America was whole.
so we live in an increasingly uncertain time, a time that is marked by strife, discord, uncertainty. I'd say pessimism maybe for the future. In this time, I think it's good to be reminded that like Star Trek rules, and
Yeah, the future could be cool.
yeah, the future could be cool. It's fun to play a game where I'm reminded that there actually should be optimism for the future. Like yeah, maybe all of this stuff sucks, but maybe one day
Yeah.
somebody could have cool space adventures.
Star Trek is a weird one because it's one of the only sci-fi properties I know that seems to have a hopeful view of the future. Like a lot of sci-fi is kind of dystopian.
For the most part, yeah, I'd say that a lot of sci-fi is quite dystopian. A lot of the newer Star Trek is kind of dystopian now. It's sort of fallen into the rut because, to some extent, I think the original creators of Star Trek were really, really keyed in on the idea that they need to try and present a more hopeful future for,
I think also they were doing a Monster of the Week like sci-fi adventure series, and that's
Yeah,
maybe
but
not necessarily that successful in today's media climate. Is no one really wants to watch Monster of the Week stuff anymore.
I do, and I wish that more people would.
Yeah, I
But
do too. I love Monster of the Week.
this game is a sequel to another game, which I think did actually end up on one of my best of lists, and that is Starcom Unknown Space, the sequel to the original Starcom Unknown Nexus, I believe it was. Starcom Nexus, there we go. So, for fans of the Starcom series, I will say this. Unknown Space basically improves upon Nexus in almost every single way. You can customize the ship now, including changing the colors of it, which is
Ooh,
really great.
I'm
You
hooked.
know, you have much more ability to actually build stuff. You can build at angles, whereas previously your ships could only be built out of blocks. Now you can actually make something that looks, like your own cool sci-fi ship. And the battle system, the combat is much more involved. You can have things like one of my favorite things to do is to just spam to build like a carrier and just overwhelm people with fighters. And that's just a lot of fun. And generally speaking, if you're thinking about all the things that StarCom did maybe not so well, this game improves basically on all of them. And you've got a much better, more usable UI. You can remember things, more easily because now you've got a really nice, detailable, searchable log of everything. So if you need to pick up on a mystery or a quest, you can search for all your details. There's just a ton of information here. There's just a lot of like this galaxy, this sector of space that we're exploring feels like a real one, right? And now we also have a smart autopilot, so we can do a lot more to just plot stuff through space. And in some ways, I think of this game as like it's a great game to listen to a podcast to, right? Because you can just set your ship to go into space, pick a direction and go, and you'll find stuff. You'll
Yeah.
find stuff to do. And you can listen to something while they're doing it, and then every so often you might get into a space battle, but the space battles are not that difficult. So,
So it's like
for all
a
of
meditative experience almost.
a little bit, yeah. I mean, there are times when I'm like, okay, I have to actually pay attention to what's going on here because this is really difficult, or I'm fighting a complicated battle, or I need to make an important choice, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But on the whole, I found it actually quite a relaxing experience to play. But if it was just all of these things, I don't think that Starcom Unknown Space would, like, I don't think it would be the number one game because it's not just those things. I think in some ways the creator, WX3 Labs, has decided to make a more interesting and more pensive, maybe space opera mystery, right? Because this game is actually fundamentally a mystery. There is a large mystery that underlies the nature of this world's reality about large space empires and the cycle of civilization. And I found that mystery to be very compelling. I wanted to pursue it until, I got an end. And the thing is, even though I did that, the game still had twists for me. I was able to get an ending for this game almost completely by accident. And it was so different to what the other ending was. This is one of those games. This is one of those games where I wanted to go back and do the other endings because I was so curious to see how it would go. Normally, I don't do that. Normally, I just play the game once. I decide on what my canonical ending is going to be, and that's the game.
And then
right?
you go watch the other endings on YouTube.
Yeah, something like that, right? If I'm that bothered. But normally, I don't even do that, right? I just accept that, this is my experience, whatever, right? But this game, I really wanted to actually see where things were going to go. And they go to galaxies, let me say that.
Wow. I remember you saying that this game gave you like an emotional moment.
Right. So I'm going to try not to spoil too much about this game. But, so viewers at home, if you want to play this game, and I highly recommend that you play this game, I can't recommend it enough. Skip ahead a couple of minutes and then you'll avoid the spoiler. So the basic gist of it is that the plot of this game involves you being lost in space. You get sucked into a wormhole with the space station, and you come under attack by unknown aliens. You're in a hostile galaxy. You've got to figure out who everybody is, what's going on. There's all kinds of crazy nonsense going on in this strange universe, right? And over the course of the story, you come across these gigantic megastructures just in space. And I remember the first time I found one, it was
Halo
this giant,
rings.
kind of, yeah, but like you can see like a polyhedral structure in space. It's like, what is this thing? Why is it here? It gives you a real sense of like the actual size that space is, to some extent. And you're uncovering this mystery about a lost precursor race and actually like their plan to ascend, to another state of being and stuff like that. And then you solve this problem. You save yourself. And there's like a pretty heroic sacrifice that's done at the end because you're building up a spaceship as well. And you're also building up a space station. And at the end, it's like, okay, well, these people are going and they can't come with us because, we only have enough we only have enough means to send you back to where you're from. And we're just going to have to be here. And, that moment is like, I sat, I was like, oh no, that sucks. That really sucks. All these people that I've come to know and care about, and now they're gone forever.
I mean, that's a real achievement in a game, is to make people who basically are just like ones and zeros, to make them feel real.
Yeah, because I would always, like, every time I would go into the space station, I would dock in at the space station and talk to them, and they might have something interesting to say to me based on stuff that I saw out in the world, right? So if I found, like, a unique thing in the game world, I could go back and talk to somebody about it and get their opinion of it, And that really helped, I think, contextualize, like, these people have relationships with each other. They're not just completely faceless. But the real sort of thing is that I was with this crew for a long time because I played this game from start to finish. I don't normally play games that are this long. And I think this game was, if I look at my Steam library, it was about, I played it for almost 30 hours, which is...
Yeah. Emilio doesn't do anything for 30 hours.
I work for 30.
Yeah, Emilio doesn't have time to play games that long. That's a feat. That is a feat and a half.
Yeah, I almost have all of the achievements on it too, right? Which is crazy because I don't normally do that. I don't normally achievement hunt. But the point is, at the end of the game, right? You save the galaxy basically. There's a big epic space battle because it has to be a big epic space battle, right? But it felt kind of earned in that way. And then you are back in our galaxy because this game takes place in like another galaxy. And then the game says, okay, well, now you're going to have to go to do your debriefing. And then there's a moment where I looked at the star map and I thought, hey, wait a minute, that's the solar system. That's here, and the game doesn't tell you not to. And I flew to Earth and I flew that distance in real time, right? Because There was no jump gate or anything like that. I had to fly that distance in real time, and it was like a solid 15-minute space flight, and I just sat there, like on the way to Earth, reflecting on the journey that I have taken, and it was a very contemplative moment. And when I got to Earth, it was just like, wow, that's us. We did it. We managed to survive. We made it.
Hey.
We made it to space, and it brought me to tears. It really did. It was the culmination of a journey. It felt like I had come home. And it wasn't like this big fanfare where you land on Earth and you're like the space hero or whatever. You see Earth, your crew are like, yeah, that's Earth. We're from there. And you could get a couple of personal anecdotes, and then you're off.
Yeah.
And this game ends in a way that I think is very reminiscent of a lot of Star Trek, because you report to the commander of Space Fleet, and he's like, wow, you sure did a space adventure. And then you're like, well, I guess I'm done. But then he's like, nope, sorry, we need you to solve another space adventure. Get in the wormhole, buddy. You're gonna go for a ride. And I'm like, yay, space adventure.
We got another job for you.
Yeah, no, what I liked about it is it felt like it was ending, but like I wanted more. I wanted more of the space adventure. And so that's why Starcom Unknown Space is my game of the year for
That's
2024.
that's awesome, dude. It really does sound like a fantastic experience. I have one last question for you about it though.
Yes.
Do you need to have played the first one?
No, no, no. This game is a standalone. Being familiar with the first game will help. Will not really help. It will just sort of give you maybe a little bit of stuff, but it's completely brand new. You don't need to be familiar with the first game to actually play this one.
I like that a lot. Because it feeds into that ending of like each adventure is its own thing.
It's like you don't need to watch the original series to watch Next Generation Star Trek. You can just jump in on a Star Trek and just watch it, and it's good.
Yeah.
Right? It's that similar vibe where, yep, new cast of space adventurers. We're gonna do a space adventure, and that's all you need sometimes. I think the fact that I spent almost 30 hours playing this game is testament to the fact that like it was really, really good. And I don't do that normally. That is not a thing that I do pretty much ever. So,
I mean, hell yeah, dude. Go
yeah,
and get this game, folks.
yeah, I highly recommend it. I really enjoyed it. If you're a fan of space adventures, I really don't think you could go wrong with this game. And it's not too expensive. It often goes on sale. So yeah, I think I recommend this to people. So we've had an emotional journey, but we are saving the best for last. So Callum, without further ado, tell us what your game of 2024 was.
Well, get ready for another emotional journey.
Okay.
My best game of 2024 is the game that I played far and away the most. It's a game where I got all of the achievements. I platinumed it. I think I spent like maybe 80 hours on this game.
Dang.
And I like how you brought up like putting on a podcast and listening to the podcast and everything while you play the game, because that's kind of the relationship I had with Xenoverse 2. But with this game, even though there were stretches of it that I felt like I could do that, I never wanted to. Because my game of the year is God of War Ragnarok.
Whoa, I did not see that coming.
It is truly, Emilio, one of the best examples of character writing in a video game that I've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like... So, let me ask you this.
Yes.
You've played the other God of War games.
You've
played some of them.
I played quite a bit of the first one. I've played through 3, and I played 2018.
So, is a lot of the storytelling in God of War Ragnarok a lot more meaningful because Kratos has been on a journey, and his character now is basically unrecognizable from his character then. But, he's had an arc that was allowed to develop because of time, basically.
Okay, so let me cast your mind back to 2018 for a minute. We're doing one of these again. Cast your mind back. I, in 2018, was working for a website called, I believe, Gaming Historia. I don't know if the website's still up. I don't know if you can still find this article. If you can, please don't. It's bad. But I wrote a review for God of War 2018, where I remember giving it a 6 out of 10, because I wanted to be a contrarian. And I rarely, I think about that article sometimes, and it's one of my least favorite things I've ever done, because I do truly believe that God of War 2018 deserved better. It was a far better game than I gave it credit for. But I think the problem was that I came into it from God of War 3. And the changes were so big. Like it felt like they took the unique semi-platforming, semi-puzzle solving, hack and slash gameplay of God of War, and they transferred it into more open world, collect resources, craft things, open chests. Like everyone has to have levels now, and you know, XP and whatever, and then Kratos has to wear armor now and things like that. And I didn't love it. I didn't love a lot of the changes, but that game did story so well. Having played through like the God of War I played through up until now and God of War 2018, God of War Ragnarok's story hits in a way that is so different. Because on its own, in isolation, its story is good, but I don't. It does a lot of stopping and starting, which I think would turn people off. Like the whole point of God of War Ragnarok is that at the end of God of War 2018, spoilers by the way, they discover that Loki, Kratos' son Atreus, his like Jotun name is Loki, or his Asgardian name, I don't know. He has two names. He is supposed to start Ragnarok, and Ragnarok will be like the end of the world. And they keep preparing for it. Like Kratos and Atreus have been training a lot, while trying to dodge Freya, who they angered in the last game, and just sort of like trying to survive. They're trying not to start this war. Kratos doesn't want to be involved in another war. So a lot of this is him, spending time with his son, trying to figure out a way to defeat fate, to like stop this from happening because it's fated to happen.
And also to stop repeating the cycle, because
Yeah.
Kratos himself was involved in like the mythological end times for Greek mythology, and now he's here, and something else. He's like watching the cycle repeat, except it's his son and not himself.
And here's the thing, like everything, the gods in this game keep referring to Kratos as Godslayer. Like they're throwing his past in his face. And there are so many great moments of just like, I don't like the part of the reason that I 100%ed this game is that I loved hearing the conversations, which is also something that God of War 2018 did very well, is that the characters will have conversations while you're traveling between locations. And sometimes they're like vaguely important, relevant to the plot, and sometimes they're just fun. So, like, someone will tell a story from their homeland. Someone will ask Kratos what, like, food he misses most now that it's, like, in this winter time. And he'll say, like, I miss olives. And everyone will be like, what the hell are olives? And and other times it'll be
I love
like...
that.
Yeah, and other times you'll go and do side quests and they'll have their own little story. And at the end of one of the side quests, Atreus asks, like, why did we even do this? And Mimir says, don't you get it? Like, your dad wants to spend time with you. If war is going to happen soon, he wants to spend some time with you. And it's moments that just made me go, like, I love all of these characters. And I want them to do so well and be so happy. And there's so much there's so many moments in this game like that. My biggest issue with the game is that, like I said, it's a bit stop and start. So there's a lot of moments where it's like, oh, we're going to do Ragnarok, but no. But we're going to do Ragnarok, but no. And there are other moments where, like, it feels like the side quests go on a bit long. This game is very long, which is the first, like, sticking point. But genuinely, I didn't mind. I thought the pacing, even with the sort of stop-start story, I thought the pacing was pretty good. I thought it fit into the characters very well to for some of them to want this and for others to be like, actually, no, I don't want to. I don't want to be in a giant war again. And I don't think I could. But I think at the end of the day, this is the best possible way Kratos' story could have ended. If there's a new God of War in the next few years, I don't think Kratos should be the main character of it. I think this should be the ending of his story because it's truly amazing. It is the struggle he has for redemption. Even now, even after he like started that struggle in the last game, he's still struggling with it because this isn't something that you do overnight. This is like it's a long process, and he starts like repeating, getting into his old habits, and then like having to deal with that, and it's so good and emotional and wonderful, and the side quests are fun and interesting. The puzzles are still good. The weapons are great. Like, there's so much to enjoy with these games. My recommendation is that you go and play God of War 2018, and you go and play God of War Ragnarok. If you can, play the other God of Wars as well, just for the context, but like you really don't have to. Like, these games hold up on their own.
Yeah, it's fascinating, because it is hard for a character, a legacy video game character, to fundamentally reinvent himself in a way that's good but still feels true to the story, right? Like, one of the major problems with the Halo franchise is that this franchise has struggled to find a protagonist outside of Master Chief. But you can't just put Master Chief.
Master Chief has died like 5 times.
Well,
He's sacrificed himself nobly like 5 times over the course of Halo.
It's hard for his character to go places, and similarly, it's difficult for the world to evolve. But the beauty of something like God of War is you can take Kratos from the Greek world and drop him into the Norse one, and he doesn't feel that out of place. He doesn't feel like you there's that joke that people talk about how, like, the next God of War should be Kratos fighting Jesus. And I think about that and I'm like, it's not necessarily the craziest idea in the world.
No, it is. It is the craziest idea in the world, Emilio, because then like Santa Monica would get sued by the makers of Darksiders, which is basically God of War Christianity edition.
Callum, I don't think Darksiders has the cultural cachet that you think it does.
Yeah, okay, but fair. But like, you see my point. Oh, by the way, speaking of dropping Kratos in the Norse world, there is a line of dialogue that I remember so clearly because you know how I talked about like it's weird that Kratos needs armor now and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
This line of dialogue contextualized all of that, and it's like an offhanded like conversation that they have, where someone asks Kratos like, "Hey, I heard the gods of your homeland can do really wild stuff. Can you do any of that stuff?" And Kratos is like, "Not anymore. I've tried." And then Atreus is like, "Oh yeah, my mom once said that or Freya, it was his mom or Freya said that like magic is connected to the land that you're in. So because Kratos is no longer in Greece, he doesn't have the powers he once had, which is why he needs like these new weapons and armor and so on."
Yeah, it's fun. It's like a fun piece of world building that nevertheless remains consistent, right? Because the basic idea of the first God of War games, the trilogy, is that you are in Greece or you're in Greece adjacent areas. And yeah, I mean, I just think it would be interesting because they could have gone in a different direction. They could have sent Kratos to Persia.
Oh, wouldn't that be crazy? Kratos in Mesopotamia.
Yeah, I mean, like, because I know
Aztec.
that they like toned down a lot of the platforming in favor of making a more like brawler action game.
It's more like a third-person over-the-shoulder action game.
Yeah. So I imagine, like, hypothetically speaking, imagine if they had gone to Persia and they had like really gone all in more on like the platforming, and then Kratos.
So Prince of God of Persia.
Yeah.
I mean, Atreus could have been a Prince of Persia.
Listen, right? It's one of those fun things that I think about from time to time, and I show up in conversations about God of War and be like, "Hey, wouldn't it have been interesting if Kratos went to Mesopotamia and like, became a king, and then he."
I would have loved to see like a more platforming heavy God of War where Kratos was in Aztec mythology. Because like the like fun temples and so on, like that would have been awesome. And also Aztec mythology has these enormous, larger than life godlike figures. Like a lot of mythologies, the gods are very human, and while they have great powers, they tend to like figure their way out of situations more by tricking people or being crafty or something. And in Aztec mythology, this one god becomes the sun. And no one likes it, so he makes it rain jaguars. And it's like,
metal.
Can you imagine fighting that dude?
I'm sure the developers would think of some crazy way. I mean, Greek mythology is not that over the top, but Kratos was battling ginormous monsters, and somehow still killing them. So yeah, maybe they would have found some way to do it.
Yeah, I think like anywhere that God of War goes from now on, I think needs to be treated with the utmost care because, like I said, the ending of this game and this game's free DLC Valhalla, which I still haven't played through all the way, it actually the Valhalla DLC made me want to go and play the old God of War games, which I started doing, which is why I'm partway through the first one. But Valhalla is like a roguelite. So you can pick some things before you go into a series of rooms where you have to go through challenges and whatnot. But it's about Kratos sort of coming to terms with the fact that Freya, who's now kind of the de facto leader of the gods of Asgard, wants Kratos to assume the position of God of War because Tyr retires, basically.
Ah,
And Kratos is like, I don't know that I can do that again.
hmm.
And he's going through this Valhalla because Tyr actually invites him to it. And Tyr says, like, if you keep going through this, you will reach the closure that you need to accept this position because you're the only one who can do it and we need it. Otherwise, war
Yeah,
will be rampant.
and we'll all get killed in Ragnarok.
Well, no. Ragnarok already happened. But the idea is that the god of war doesn't necessarily facilitate war as much as he makes sure that it's done properly. Like he facilitates the rules
Ah,
of war.
right. It's like the UN, I
Yeah,
guess, but
yeah.
actually capable of doing stuff.
He's a Geneva Convention that can kill a god.
Yeah.
But
All
yeah,
right.
it's a fun idea. I really love this game. I think anyone, the only problems are the ones I listed about like it's a bit long, the story kind of takes a while to get places, but I think it's paced very well. The other thing is that it's very graphics intensive. I played the PS4 version because I wasn't sure that my PC could handle it. So, just maybe check out the requirements before you buy it.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, yeah. It's a triple A game, right? And a lot of these games these days, they can be pretty graphics intensive.
And a lot of them weirdly require solid state drives now, which I've noticed. Like the new Cyberpunk update made the game so that it requires an SSD, and that sucks, dude. Like, I bought that game like 3 years ago, and now I need a new piece of hardware to play it.
Yeah, that's the march of progress, some would say.
Mm. All right, well, that is my game of the year. That's our games of the year, actually. God of War Ragnarok, and what was the name of your game again, Amelia?
Starcom Unknown Space.
If nothing else on these lists, I would suggest that you go check those out. But, go and check out the other ones as well. The thing about these lists is that we set them up in such a way that there is reasoning for the rankings, but they're kind of fluid. Like I believe that I could recommend God of War Ragnarok to anyone over the other two games, and Emilio believes that Starcom is the game that deserved to have this spot over the other two games, but that doesn't mean that the other two games aren't worth your time, so go and check it out.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like I've each game that I've got is different in genre. I've attack like a turn-based tactics game, a space adventure, and a point-and-click adventure. These are all different types of games. In some ways, I think about it more as like these are like the best examples of those types of games that I played. Therefore,
Yeah.
they're worthy of recommendation. I still think you should play Nightmare Frames. All of that stuff. But yeah, Starcom was just the one that clinched it in the end.
Mm. Well, thank you very much for joining us for the top games of 2024. What a year! It sure happened.
Yeah.
Um, keep an eye out for some of our other content that should be coming out soon. Like Emilio said earlier, check out our streams. Maybe you'll find another game that you want to play there, or you can suggest us some of your top games, and maybe we'll play that on stream.
Yeah, we just, we wanted to say thank you again to all of our fans. We're almost at 2,000 subscribers, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Uh,
And we want to say also a very big thank you to our patrons, Dorian, Liam Anderson, and Discordance, who provide us with the funds necessary to keep this leaky tub floating.
yeah, we just got to get to the next planet and fix our ship. And I keep saying that every time we stop.
We'll keep going. The duct tape over the engines will hold.
Yeah.
So thank you to those three for buying us new duct tape for our engines. In the meantime, and thank you for to the rest of you for watching these videos. Like simply watching and commenting and liking and sharing and all of that stuff, it really, really helps. We've been doing this for a few years now. I think like 5 years.
Yeah, geez.
And we have retained pretty much all our subscribers, which is pretty big. Like, it would be nice if we grew a bit faster, but we have not lost basically any subscribers, and that is pretty huge for us. So thank you so much for sticking around and being patient with our content. We really, really appreciate you, and I hope you have a fantastic 2025.
Yeah, let's hope for better things in 2025, everybody.
Yeah, good luck to
Good
every one of
night.
our American viewers.
Yeah, good luck and good night. Well,
So, well, yeah, so long.